What's up, fish tank people? Dustin's Fish Tanks bring it to you on a Sunday, baby. How's everybody doing? I hope you're doing well. In today's video, we're gonna give you a couple of cichlid ideas. I'm gonna talk about some ways I would roll with the cichlid aquarium. I'm gonna talk about why I generally do not keep cichlids, and I'm gonna give you about 4 or 5 species of cichlids that I would keep if I were to do a cichlid tank. Hey, it's cool if I don't shower before I start making videos, right? Alright, let me give you a little backstory on the catalyst for this video. This video is inspired and for my man Jolly. This guy was my #1 man when we both got poisoned into the aquarium hobby together back when we were both about 14, 15 years old. He used to roll with me to the Pet Supplies Plus in Findlay, Ohio. Flag City, baby. Coincidentally enough, this man and I both are from Northwest Ohio, but both randomly married Kentucky girls that are from near the Green River. How funny is that? This dude also married me and my beautiful wife, who will never be in a YouTube video. That being said, Jolly hits me up and he's all excited because he's got a 45-gallon aquarium. I go, what are you gonna put in it, Jolly? He goes, I'm gonna put in cichlids. And I go, why are you gonna put in cichlids? And he's just like, I like cichlids, and that's kind of how we got started in the game. So in today's video, I'm gonna talk about why I personally do not keep African cichlids. Then I'm gonna give you some of the Dustin versions of how I would keep a cichlid tank. And then I'm gonna give you my top 5 types of cichlids that I would keep in a planted aquarium. I want to throw it back to this fish right here. This is an old Frontosa that I purchased back in the day for a planted cichlid tank. This Frontosa was one of 3. This one lived the longest. I moved from Cleveland, left it at my boy Owen's house. He kept feeding it and it grew way too big for this sweet 40 cube tank that I have. Absolutely love Frontosas. Got a chill personality, fabulous color. So I do want to point out, back in the day I did keep a couple of cichlids. Sadly, this fish got too big for this tank and wasn't given away fast enough despite leaving it behind. Now look, it's been like 20 some years since I've kept cichlids, so if you guys have any sort of feedback, maybe you're doing something that I've never tried with cichlids and it's working out for you, I'd love to hear what you have to say about African cichlids in the comments. But here's my spiel on why I don't keep Africans in the first place. It's about chill. I'm an Aquarius. Apparently my zodiac sign has something to do with needing periods of solitude and calmness. Look, there's something about looking in an aquarium and watching another fish get chased around relentlessly by one angry fish that just doesn't do it for me. Something about knowing that one fish is in there getting terrorized by one other fish is ridiculous. Forget the aggression of cichlids for a second and just set that aside. I like plants in my aquarium. I like to look in and see something that is green. I do not like how cichlids tear up my plants. Now later on when I get cleaned up and go out to Greenhouse 2.0, I am going to show you some ideas of what you could do to keep plants in your aquarium with cichlids. But what if you want to do a carpet? What if you want to do a dirted tank? Obviously cichlids digging along the bottom of an aquarium, it's not going to be so conducive to keeping cichlids who are going to reach down and dig up your dirt substrate, entirely making a mess of the place. You hear about cichlid tanks getting algae because they aren't balanced. When you have plants in your aquarium, you can have more balance, right? So you have more balance, you have more plant load, it absorbs the nitrite, nitrate, and so on. So you have less waste in the aquarium because the plants actually do work for you. In a cichlid aquarium, you cannot get that heavy plant load with the lighter fish load because the heavy plant load will be destroyed by the fish. Conversely with this, I've heard, and I'd love your feedback in the comments on it, people who keep cichlids can generally overcrowd them so that the beating is dispersed. Think about that for a minute. You have a bunch of humans in the room. We'll just get one angry dude in the mix and then have a bunch more people so the beating is spread out. That's my spiel on why I don't keep cichlids. Let me get cleaned up, roll out to Greenhouse 2.0, show you some plants, and talk about my favorite little cichlids that I would keep in a planted cichlid aquarium. And while I'm on my commute to 2.0 with too long hair, I need to go see D again. I want to address one of the questions Jolly asked me via text. He said, yo man, where do you get your inspiration for your tanks? And without question, I replied right back, the gorge. And then he said, after that, where do you go if you can't get to the gorge? I said, Oliver cannot. And 2 things on that. 1, if you aren't inspired by nature, you're not going to be able to bring it back home. Look at all the great aquascapers. They're always like outside or have been outside or have seen stuff Creating nature, as Takashi Amano said, is the ultimate luxury. Inspiration source 1 should always be Mother Nature. And then 2, I always talk about Oliver Knott because he's one of the few aquascapers I see that's consistently been doing different stuff. Not all of his aquariums look the same. He's got a really killer Oscar tank. I know he's got some sweet cichlid tanks as well. He's always doing different stuff. Now it's time to roll out and show you guys how I would do a cichlid tank and talk about my favorite fish for a small cichlid aquarium. Okay, so I want to show you how I would set up an aquarium for a bunch of small, little guy cichlids, not cichlids that get too big, okay? This is one of the leftover Fluval Flora tanks from our friends at Fluval from the Kids Free Live Aquascaping contest that I did up at the Aquatic Experience. And I was excited to bring one of these home because I get to play in it myself for a change. I never get to play during the trade shows, it's all work. But in here, I want to show you how I would roll with a small cichlid setup. I've got big row pebbles right here that I'm gonna just put a light layer of these in. Now, no, these pebbles are larger than normal size. They're a little bit larger than normal. The reason for that is small cichlids can't pick them up and can't move stuff around. So I'm gonna do just a light layer of these. Notice I am not dirting this aquarium because the assumption is that the fish will be able to pull the plants out and will make a huge mess. But just a little bit of them in here. All right, I'm gonna use these rocks here. I told you how I was inspired by the gorge. These rocks were collected legally from a spot near the gorge. And I love rocks with a lot of character and coloration. Note, the color that your rocks are when you have them dry is different than they're gonna be when they're wet. So these are actually gonna be a little bit darker. But with cichlids, I'm gonna go a heavy hardscape here, a little bit of driftwood, and then I'm gonna show some of the plants that will work in with it. But, you know, when in doubt, Mother Nature's got you. Grab yourself some big rocks. I did not pre-plan this at all, so what you're getting is the freestyle Dusty, big in the back, small in the front. And then what I'm gonna do is probably work in some of the driftwood that I've got. That's what I want it to be. Now here is the general idea. Now I'd like to roll into the greenhouse and grab a few species of plants and work in some plants into this. And I've got the general hardscape laid out, heavy on the rock. Not too concerned about the softscape. Softscape's gonna be a bunch of hard plants for fish to tear up in the small cichlid tanks. So let's roll in real quick, grab a couple of quick plants, and then bring them back out here and add a little green to this. All right, and let me start by saying I promise you absolutely nothing with adding plants to a tank that cichlids are going to live into. However, these are some plants that you would potentially try to have some luck with. This is one of my favorites. This is Bulbitis Hootalati. I've done a lot of videos about it. It's basically bulletproof plant. This is where it was above water grown and that we've regrown it here. I mean, this can go wherever the heck it wants because it's a baller shot caller plant. And this plant reminds me of plants that are in the gorge. So it's kind of a fun plant from Africa, rolls like that. Other ones as well, same deal. This is Anubias Afazeli. Above water growth right here, melting off. I'm gonna rip that off. That's not doing you any good. It's gonna get bigger, so I'm gonna kind of tuck it back in here. You could super glue these, and I would recommend them depending upon the size of the fish. I'd love to get your tips in the comments of what you do with your cichlid aquarium and the plants with it. So Afazeli right there. I've done videos on it. You can see how you attach it to driftwood. I'm just kind of giving you the design. And then one of the things you can do to kind of soften it up in the front, and then this is just more like it's gonna make a mess because it's cichlids, but good old fashioned Java moss. And there might be people out there like, oh, the cichlids will eat it. I don't know. I think they might mess with it, but it's so hardy that it'll kind of just float around and grow on its own. I'd love to get your feedback in the comments on you know, if Java moss would be harmful to them. I'm sure there's somebody out there with that kind of thought, and maybe it is. And then I've got another one here. This is actually a plant we didn't stock for a long time. This is Water Sprite. I'm gonna not even attempt to pronounce its scientific name. But this can grow above water or below water. We've been growing it below water, but if it has problems, you can just float it, and then obviously the fish can't go above the water line to get it. Who knows, maybe your cichlids are wild and they can, but this is a fun one. Gives you a nice little bit of like fluffy contrast with it. So I'm liking the water Sprite. Have not used it in a long time, not to be confused with Hygrophila deformis, also known as the water wisteria. I'm doing it in here. I've got lots of videos on making boost trees, but this is a Bucephalandra mini Catherine. Super duper fun, and I love, as I break it, I love the way that this kind of like just gives you the really small leaves make a big impact on Escape. Now I'm using the wire. A lot of people would use super glue. The Bucephalandra mini Catherine, and I always like to have it flow with like the kind of vein, if you will, of the leaves. You could put some super glue on it as well. And this is how I did my old B26, is with the wire. There's one. Now I gotta think this is gonna go up like that. And I like to do everything in threes with the boosts or the trees or anything like that. So I like to use kind of a branch area and have it kind of come off of it. Bring that on in here. And there we go. And a quick halftime adjustment. I don't like the size of the scale of this leaf. See how that leaf is just huge compared to everything else in the Escape, which is kind of smaller. So I would actually substitute some Bacopa Yellow Flame instead of the Affazelli. But super fun plant in the back. And you would try that one out. Even though it's a stem plant, it's a harder, thicker stem plant. I'd love to get your feedback on what plants you use with your small cichlid aquariums. All right, but then what would we put in this aquarium right here? We're going for smaller cichlids, obviously, because this is a smaller tank. And folks, I could use your help in the comments on what you would put in this aquarium or your type of small cichlid aquarium. But it goes like this for me. I got about 4 species I'd want to run with here. The first one, this is a gangster fish. I'm gonna talk about the Lulupe. Now, it's an African fish, but it stays small. I like the style of the Lulupe cichlid because it's kind of creeping in the background, but I've seen them blast on a bigger fish than them. I don't know if the Lulupe would tear up plants or not. I've actually never kept one in a planted tank, but the Lupe would be one of the 4 I'd keep in here. Another one, Neolamprigus multipuncatus. I might be butchering the name of that. Or, and this is the one I would really do, Neolamprigus burchardi. That's right, burchardi cichlid or shell dweller cichlids, the small shell dweller cichlids, I think would be phenomenal in here. A couple of shellies rolling around in here. You'd have to put a shell somewhere in there. I believe they like a little bit of sand to kind of play with those, so help me out with the shell dwellers there. And last, but certainly not least, this fish got my boy Jolly into the hobby. This got my buddy Rue into the hobby, and my girl Abby into the hobby, and myself. I'm talking about the convict cichlid. Throw a couple black and white convict cichlids in here and roll. They're gonna breed within about 5 minutes of being put into the aquarium. That's right, folks, the super beginner fish, the convict cichlid, would be the #1 fish I would put in here. Drop me a comment on what kind of cichlid you would put in an aquarium like this, or what cichlids you're keeping with plants. Everybody make it an awesome week, and tank on. Later.